If you talk to someone who's not a Christian and you ask him why he doesn't believe in the Bible, he might not answer you truthfully, but what he is thinking might be something like this. The Bible? Huh, it's a fairy tale. Who could believe those amazing stories and say, Exodus, Moses and the 10 plagues? Impossible. No, 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 no. I want nothing to do with that Bible. Yep, that was me many years ago. I did not believe. But what I came to realize was, if you don't look, you will never find. Here is what I found. What I found is this hieroglyphic symbol you see here. It is being used today to tell us that Moses and the Bible is nothing more than a figment of our imagination. Hence, my goal today is to answer the question, is Moses in the book of Exodus a fairy tale or reality? In the Bible is the book of Exodus. It reveals an amazing journey which follows the lives of the people of Israel and their liberation from Egypt. Exodus covers over 400 years of history, but in this video I will only look at 1 year, the year of Moses and the 10 plagues. In this year we see the plagues of blood, frogs, locusts, and many more, with the final plague being the death of every firstborn, including Pharaoh's son. Then we see Moses, under the direction of God, splitting apart the Red Sea, which allows 2 million Jewish slaves to escape Pharaoh's army. Exodus is an amazing story. It shows us the origins of the Jewish people. Yet, there are some who do not believe. Actually, they refuse to believe. Why? Well, they say, there is no proof. There's no evidence. So I ask the question, why is there no proof? Why is there no evidence? Here is why. We have been told we can only look for evidence of Moses in one time period of 1250 BC. So my next question is, who is controlling the sands of time? But before we leave this slide, let me point out at the bottom of the screen the timeline year. It is set to 2022. This means all the activity on this particular slide occurred in the year 2022. Now back to our story. Who is controlling the sands of time? Egyptologists have made themselves the timekeepers. They are the #1 source of non-believers. Many of them say Exodus is a fairy tale. But the Egyptologists also say if Exodus did happen, it was during the reign of one of the most powerful rulers of all time, the Pharaoh Ramesses II, in the year 1250 BC. Now hang on, let's just think about that. On the one hand, the Egyptologists say Exodus never happened. But on the other hand, they say it did happen in the year 1250 BC. How can they be so sure of the year if Exodus never happened? Are they trying to hide something? Yes, they are. What they are trying to do is to replace the truth with their fairy tales. They know we will never, never ever find evidence of Exodus if they can force us to look in the wrong century. So why did they select the year 1250 BC for Exodus? To find the answer, we need to go back in time 200 years to 1821. In 1821, the world could no longer read hieroglyphics. Without this knowledge, there was a huge black hole in ancient Egyptian history. Many of the names of the pharaohs were unknown at this time. They were lost to antiquity. So how were these lost names of the pharaohs found? The names were found through this man, a French scholar, Mr. Jean Champollion. But he didn't solve this puzzle all by himself. No. He was given the key to unlocking hieroglyphics from a British citizen named Mr. Thomas Young. With this key, in 1822, Mr. Champollion became the first person to decipher hieroglyphics. With this new knowledge, the world could now read the names of the pharaohs. But we still had a problem. Even though they knew the names of the pharaohs, they could not figure out when many of the pharaohs lived. One reason for this was the calendars of ancient Egypt were very complex and confusing. So where did they find the dates of when the pharaohs lived? The answer came as a big surprise to me and to my little friend. The dates of when the pharaohs lived came from the Bible, not from any ancient Egyptian history books, not from any temple, and not from any tomb. The dates came from the Bible, the same Bible they call a fairy tale. Why did they choose the Bible? Well, during the 1800s, many people believed the Bible was a history book with accurate dates of famous Bible events. So then, who connected the pharaohs to the Bible? It was Mr. Champollion. He was very familiar with the Bible. So we can only guess what he was thinking to himself. If I can only connect just one of these Bible dates to a pharaoh, then I will know when he lived in history. So Mr. Champollion took his ideas to Egypt in 1829 to a temple called Karnak. 3,000 years ago, this is how the temple looked. Now let's pretend we are walking in the main courtyard and we start walking around these people on the right side. Notice the huge wall with the 4 flagpoles. We will talk more about this wall later. Now we keep walking around these people to this wall on the right. We see 2 statues here. Between them is a doorway. If we walk through it and then turn around, we will see these columns over here in yellow with the small people below. These same columns can be seen in the next slide. We now can see the same columns in yellow with the small people below. We are now outside of the main courtyard. And on the right side in the red square is that big wall with the 4 flagpoles, which I pointed out earlier. This is all that's left of it. The white square is the wall that Mr. Champollion translated. This wall has a name. It is called the Buddhist Portal, or it is also known as Shoshank's Wall. Let's zoom in on this wall. The large figure in the middle of this wall is the god Amun. Inscribed on this wall is the name of the pharaoh who led a battle campaign into the Holy Land. His name is Shoshank I. Remember that name. Now, in the red square are these little small figures that look like small men. They are called name rings, or they could be called a cartouche. Each one represents a city or a location which the pharaoh Shoshank captured or took control of. As you can see, there are many name rings all over the wall. The most important part of this wall is the block in the white square. It has been patched up. There used to be a big hole here. Now let's get a little closer to this block. Here again, we see the same block in white. The most important name ring on this block is the one in the red square. Mr. Champollion made a drawing of this name ring. Let's take a look. Now here we see his drawing, but notice the wall behind his drawing is an older picture. taken before the wall was patched up. So we still see the cracks and holes in this wall. His translation of this name ring is Yuda ha Malkuth, which means Jude of the kingdom, or it could mean King of Judah. With this translation, Gene believes he is connected to Pharaoh Shoshenq I to the Jewish people of Judah. That is what he believes. 20 years after Mr. Champollion died, may he rest in peace, in 1849, the new experts in hieroglyphics came back to the same name ring and realized Mr. Champollion had made a mistake. What this really says is Yad ha-Melech, which means hand of the king, not king of Judah. This new translation is universally accepted by scholars today. Let me show you what the website Wikipedia says about this name ring. I took a picture of their website, which you can see here. To find this page, just Google Buddhist portal. As you can see in the red square, Hand of the King is the correct translation accepted by modern scholars today. Therefore, we can conclude this name ring has no connection to Judah or the Jewish people. Mr. Champollion has made a critical mistake, but during his lifetime, he does not know it. So in 1829, he continues his quest to connect the Pharaoh to the Bible. So Gene goes to the Bible, the second book of Chronicles 12:2, which says, in the 5th year of Rehoboam, Shishak, the king of Egypt, marched on Jerusalem, since it had been unfaithful to the Lord. Notice, Rehoboam is King Rehoboam, the son of King Solomon, who died 5 years earlier. Also, notice that the Shishak we see here from the Bible is not spelled the same, nor pronounced the same, as the Pharaoh Shoshenq from the temple wall I showed you at Karnak. Then, in Chronicles 12:4, it says, he captured the fortified towns of Judah and reached Jerusalem. Notice, the he in this sentence is Shishak, and the Judah we see here is a large province with many small towns. The capital is Jerusalem. After reading Chronicles, Gene believes he has found his Bible connection. So he accepts the date given by the Bible for the capture of Jerusalem, 925 BC. He now thinks he has connected a pharaoh to a date in history. So let's do a little review. After Gene's death, may he rest in peace, the new experts in hieroglyphics found that Mr. Champollion's translation of the name ring was inaccurate, which means Shoshenq I never conquered Judah, which means Shoshenq from the temple walls of Karnak is not Shishak from the Bible. So, the true conclusion is that Shoshenq I is not connected in any way to 925 BC. The Pharaoh Shoshenq we found on the temple walls of Karnak has no connection to 925 BC. We can be sure of that. Yet, today, if you Google Shoshenq I, you will find many websites such as Britannica, Wikipedia, Oxford, and many more. They all say the same thing. The Shoshenq date comes from the Bible. I think that is very interesting. Why? Because indirectly they are all saying you can trust the dates in the Bible. The Bible is a true historical record of the ancient past. I think sites like Britannica look for the most reliable information before they share it with the world, or else they would go out of business. So all these websites are saying the same thing. The Bible is not a fairy tale. So what has happened over the last 200 years? The Egyptologists have continued to use the 925 BC date given by the Bible. But on the other hand, they have continued to say, we do not want the Exodus date of 1450 BC given by the Bible. They have decided to make up their own date for Exodus. Now, isn't that nice to have that kind of magic power to just pick and choose the dates you want and ignore the dates you don't like. Let's see how out of thin air they created a date for Exodus. We will see how Exodus, Ramesses II, and Shoshank I are all connected to 925 BC. Let's start with what they knew in 1829. They could read hieroglyphics. Through this, they knew the sequence of the pharaoh's names, and through hieroglyphics, they knew the length of reign for each pharaoh. And now, with the 925 BC date from the Bible, they had a starting point in history. The king that lived before Shoshank I was King Su-si-Menes II, and they knew he was king for 20 years. So they just add 20 to 925 to get 945. Then they knew King Siamun was ruler for 14 years, so they add 14 to 945 to get 959. And they just kept doing this for all of these kings, including Ramesses II, who was given a date of 1250 BC. Now we see how all these dates are connected to 925 BC. But as we all know, Shoshank's connection to 925 BC is a fairy tale. Hence, all of these other dates are nothing more than fairy dust. There you go. That's how they did it. Ramesses II was given the date of 1250 BC, but for some mysterious reason, they decided to also attach Exodus to this same date. There is no logical reason to do this. Their feeble excuse was they said, the name Ramesses appears in the Bible at the same time as Exodus of Moses. Let's see what they're talking about. We are now in the book of Genesis 47:11. It says, Then Joseph settled his father and brothers in the land of Egypt, and gave them property in the best part of the land of Ramesses, as the Pharaoh had commanded. There are multiple problems with the name Ramesses in this verse. To start off with, the event in this verse concerning Joseph, his father, and his 11 brothers took place 200 to as much as 400 years before the Exodus of Moses. So if we still believe the Pharaoh Ramesses is being referred to in this verse, then we must conclude Ramesses II was at least 200 years old during the time of Exodus. Impossible! Next, notice Ramesses as it is used in this verse is a location name. And this is true every time the word Ramesses is used in the Bible. It only refers to a location, never to a pharaoh. Also, think of when the Bible was written. It was rewritten hundreds of years after Exodus. By this time, the original name of the city had changed to Ramesses. Let's see how the name of the city changed. In Genesis 47, Pharaoh says to Joseph, Now that your father and brothers have come to you, the land of Egypt is open before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. They can live in the land of Goshen. We see here the original name of the city when it was called Goshen. Notice, this slide and the previous slide are both saying exactly the same thing, except this verse is in quotation marks. So here we see the contemporaneous name of the city, Goshen. The name Ramesses was substituted for Goshen hundreds of years later when the rewriting of the Bible. So in conclusion, Exodus should not be connected to Ramesses II. So how are the Egyptologists using this fairy dust? Well, they are trying to sprinkle it on us to convince us that Ramesses II is the pharaoh of the Exodus in the year 1250 BC. I have shown you the Ramesses date of 1250 BC is fairy dust. Next, I have shown you why connecting Exodus to Ramesses is also fairy dust. The Egyptologists have told us we can trust the 925 BC date from the Bible. So I say we should also trust the Bible date for Exodus 1450 BC. Over 50 pharaohs have been sprinkled with fairy dust. All the pharaohs on this list are connected to 925 BC. We now know that Shoshank I should not be connected to 925, so let's delete his date. The next question is, do we know who is the real Shishak of the Bible? Well, recently, in the last few years, evidence has been found showing us that every pharaoh on this list had 5 names. So 5 times 50 is 250 names. Out of all these names, only one matches the Bible Shishak, and that name is Ramesses II. He should be given the 925 BC date. But I digress. This is a huge topic for another day. I will cover this in a future presentation. Today, many Egyptologists still refuse to disconnect the pharaoh Shoshank from 925 BC. Why are they trying to use a date that has no connection to reality? It is because they are trying to hide the reality of Exodus. Starting today, we need to stop looking for Moses in 1250 BC. We will not allow ourselves to be forced to look in the wrong century. We will not be sprinkled with fairy dust. Any biblical evidence found should not be rejected due to Egyptian dating. We can stop looking for Moses in the wrong century. So what has been found in 1450 BC? Well, there is a lot. I have put the evidence in part 2 of this video. Please go there now.